This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
OPEC oil output has fallen in April, a Reuters survey found on Tuesday, reflecting lower exports from Iran, Iraq and Nigeria against a backdrop of ongoing voluntary supply cuts by some members agreed with the wider OPEC Plus alliance. The OPEC pumped 26.49 million barrels per day, BPD, this month, down 100,000 barrels of oil per day from March's revised total. The survey, based on shipping data and information from industry sources, found several members of OPEC Plus, which includes OPEC, Russia and other allies, made new cuts in January to counter economic weakness and increased supply outside the group. Producers agreed in March to keep the cuts in place until the end of June.
Traders are rushing to fill up storage tanks along the U.S. East Coast with distillate fuels, like diesel and heating oil. Data from storage broker The Tank Tiger showed on Monday, a sign of deepening oversupply that is weighing on refiners' profits. Largely warmer than expected winter weather in U.S. northeastern Europe has cut distillates demand and hit refiners' margins across the globe in recent months, a factor that drove softer first-quarter earnings by oil majors and top independent refiners. Spreads between U.S. crude and diesel futures, or cracks, that reflect refining margins, have dropped more than 30% so far this year to under $25 a barrel.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Oil prices fell for a third day on Wednesday amid increasing hopes of a ceasefire agreement in the Middle East and rising crude inventories and production in the U.S., the world's biggest oil consumer. Brent crude futures for July fell 70 cents, or 0.8%, to $85.63 a barrel by 0456 GMT. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude for June declined 75 cents, or 0.9%, to $81.18 per barrel. Expectations that a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas could be in sight, following a renewed push led by Egypt to revive stalled negotiations between the two, pushed oil prices lower.
The White House on Tuesday reformed the U.S. environmental review process for major projects that officials said would speed up approval of anything from power transmission from wind and solar farms to semiconductor manufacturing. The reforms are the second and final phase of adjustments to the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, by the administration of President Joe Biden, a Democrat. It was in response to an overhaul of the bedrock environmental law by former President Donald Trump, a Republican, in 2021. NEPA, a 1969 law that requires environmental reviews for major projects, is a frequent focus of litigation that can delay construction for years. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Most base metals fell in thin holiday trade on Wednesday, as a firmer dollar made greenback-priced commodities more expensive for buyers holding other currencies. 3-month copper on the London Metal Exchange fell 0.9% to $9,901.50 per metric ton by 0334 GMT, and aluminium eased 0.3% to $2,584 a ton. LME lead slid 0.3% to $2,209.50. Nickel shed 0.3% to $19,175. While tin rose 0.2% to $31,270 a ton. Several Asian markets, including top metals consumer China, were closed for the Labor Day holiday.
Gold prices fell on Wednesday to their lowest level in nearly 4 weeks as investors look towards a U.S. Federal Reserve policy decision that could offer for more cues on its rate cut timeline. Spot gold was down 0.1% at $2,284.44 per ounce as of 0436 GMT, after hitting its lowest level since April 5 earlier in the session. Prices fell as much as 2% on Tuesday due to a new PTICK in the dollar and U.S. Treasury yields. Bullion prices have fallen more than $140 after scaling a record high of $2,431.29 on April 12. U.S. gold futures were down 0.4% at $2,293.10 per ounce.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
Chicago wheat futures rose on Wednesday as traders assessed the likely impact on supply amid dry weather conditions in key growing regions of Russia and the United States. Soybean futures fell for a second day, dragged lower by a sharp decline in soy oil prices and a strengthening dollar, which pressured U.S. farm goods by making them more expensive for importers. Corn was flat.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.